And good evening, Pittsburgh Steelers fans. Welcome to another episode of Steelers Friday Night Six Pack. I am your host, as always, Tony Defio. So I thank you for joining me on this fine and humid in Pittsburgh Friday night. If you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, and if you're listening on one of your audio platforms, thank you for joining me as well. And you can catch this show, The Hangover, the Steelers Preview, the War Room, the Curtain Call, the Scobro Show. I can go on and on. You can catch all those shows live every week on Facebook and YouTube. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And please press like on YouTube and Facebook. And you can catch those live shows on our any audio platform you can choose. You can catch all those live shows, and you can catch audio exclusive shows like the Retro Show with Brian Anthony Davis and yours truly, the Live Mic with Michael Beck, the Stat Geek with Dave Schofield. There's Let's Ride with Jeff Hartman. There's so many shows. I challenge myself every week to try to remember them all, but you can find them. Just check out Behind the Steel Curtain on iHeartRadio, for example. You'll find all those shows. Check out our channel on YouTube. You'll find all those shows. Facebook, we're always posting stuff on Facebook, on our Facebook channel and our Facebook page. So please check those out. And thank you to the live chat for joining me. There's George Teston, Cree, Sean Manahan, Patricia, Eric, Steelers Pittsburgh, Arthur. Notice how I didn't try to say a lot of those last names. I'm trying to stay cool. All right. I'm trying to keep my cool persona up, so I don't want to fumble those last names. And please check out Behind Steel Curtain, our website, where we bring you news, commentary, film breakdown. Anytime there's breaking news, anytime there's a transaction, anytime, for example, Sam Darnold breaks everybody's heart by getting traded to the Panthers instead of the Steelers, you'll find it all on Behind the Steel Curtain, the website. So please check that out. As we like to say, it's your one-stop shop for all your Steelers needs. It might have been changed. I don't know. It's unofficial, but it's all cool. So please check that out. And as always, I have a few topics I want to discuss on tonight's show. And by the way, hi to Owen David, who asked if I'm on a night shift. I've been on a night shift since January. Yeah, I've adjusted. Just Me, always a legend. E.J. Lewis. I said those names because they were easy. And I try to take the easy way out. So that's why I pronounced those names. But the other ones, I haven't worked my way up to that yet. But thank you all for joining me. But as I was saying, I have a few topics I'd like to discuss, starting with the Sam Darnold trade from the Jets to the Panthers on Monday. I think a lot of Steeler fans were hopeful that he would wind up in Pittsburgh, and kind of like last year when Jameis Winston was available, and a lot of people wanted the Steelers to sign him to be Ben's backup for a year or so, and sort of be groomed, even though he was a long-time starter in the league by that point. But people were hoping that would happen last year. It didn't. He signed with the Saints. And this year, Sam Darnold, instead of coming to Pittsburgh, he went to Carolina. So another one bites the dust in that regard. Another future heir apparent who has a high pedigree doesn't come to Pittsburgh. And when you hear what the Panthers had to give up to get Darnold, 2 and a 4 for 2022 and a 6 for 2021, draft picks, it seems like a pretty reasonable deal. And you wonder why couldn't the Steelers make that same kind of deal? And it seems pretty reasonable to bring in somebody who has a ton of potential, who started for 3 years in the league, who's still really young. I believe he's only 23, Darnold, and could be your quarterback for the next decade. It seems like a pretty reasonable deal. The only problem with that is Sam Darnold is still a big unknown. There's still a lot of question marks around him, even though he has started for 3 years. He started for 3 years with the Jets. And, the Panthers situation is a little bit different than Pittsburgh's. The Panthers, as soon as they acquired Darnold, they reportedly picked up his 5th-year option, which is going to be worth just under $19 million for 2022. And that obviously guarantees that he'll be making $4.7 million in 2021. So that's what, $24 million you're guaranteeing this guy over the next 2 years. And, they decided to move on from Teddy Bridgewater, at least reportedly so. I mean, he's still a Panther, but they've supposedly given him permission to seek a trade. And you know what that means? When a team gives a player permission to seek a trade, you could probably pretty much guarantee that he's not going to find a trading partner, and they're likely going to cut him, if not before June 1st, then after June 1st. Either way, there's no doubt that Sam Darnold is going to Carolina to be their starter in week 1 of the 2021 season. So in the Steelers' case, they already worked out a deal with Ben Roethlisberger. He's coming back this year. There's no question now. They worked out a deal, so he's not going to retire. They're not going to release him. He's here for 2021. So if Darnold were to come here in the trade, you'd be paying him $4.7 million to sit on the bench for 2021 and be the backup and quote unquote learn behind Ben. But would that really be the smart move to do that with him? As I said, he's already started 3 years in New York, and you really need to find out about this guy once and for all. And having him sit on the bench for his 4th year, I don't think that would have been a wise move, especially if you're the Steelers. And would they trade for him and not pick up his 5th-year option? It seems to me if you're going to invest that kind of if you're going to make that kind of a investment as far as trading away 3 picks, even though none of them are first-round picks, if you're going to trade 3 picks to get him, you're probably going to want to bring him here for 2 years. So you're gonna keep him here. You're gonna have him on the bench at $4.7 million in 2021, and then when Ben retires, presumably next year, or you get rid of Ben or whatever, suddenly you're going to pay that guy $18.9 million to be your quarterback next year. That might not be the going rate for the top guys in the modern era, but it's still a lot of money to pay somebody who is an unknown still. There's a lot of question marks about Sam Darnold and whether or not he's the real deal. So he'd be coming off of 3 lukewarm years and a year where he wouldn't have played other than maybe mopping up for Ben, or maybe he plays a game or 2 if Ben got hurt, that kind of thing. So basically he'd have rode the bench in his 4th year instead of playing. Now you're gonna trust him to be your guy in his 5th year, and you're going to pay him, $19 million. That's to me, that would be a pretty big risk. It's a big risk for the Panthers, yes, what they're doing, but at least they're going to have 2021 to sort of see what they have in him. And yeah, they're going to be on the hook for that kind of money next year, but at least they'll know, and maybe they can adjust. Maybe they can plan for the future. Whereas the Steelers, they would have just had to throw Darnold in there next year and pay him all that money and hope that he had a good year. And let's say he did have a decent year, not a great year, but let's say he threw in 2022, let's say he would have thrown 24, 25 touchdowns, 10, 11 interceptions, maybe 4,000 yards or so. Maybe they make the playoffs. It's a good year. And you're hopeful that he's, and he would be in his mid-20s by that point. He'd be like, what, 25, 26, 25, I guess. So you're hopeful that he's on the right path, but still you don't know for sure, right? And if you're the Steelers heading into 2023, that offseason, you have a big you would have a big decision to make. Do you fully commit to this guy on a long-term deal? And by that point, he's going to want probably $30 million a year, or at least close to it. It wouldn't be superstar franchise, Patrick Mahomes money or even Dak Prescott money, but it'd be pretty. He'd want to be paid a lot of money. And if you don't do that, do you franchise tag him? And that might be even more expensive as far as a base salary for 2023. I mean, that's a big investment to make in a guy like that, who's still not, who might seem like he's on the right path, but you really don't know just yet, because you only got to see him for 1 year, and in the other year he was a backup. So it would have been a bit different if the Steelers got Darnold as opposed to the Panthers. And the Panthers, I mean, they still might have buyer's remorse next year if Darnold is really bad or doesn't show any kind of progress in 2021. Now you're on the hook for $19 million, with this guy next year. And Teddy Bridgewater he might be a great example of betting on a quarterback with a high pedigree. And Teddy Bridgewater, before he hurt his knee, he was expected to go far in Minnesota. There were high hopes for him, and he was on his way. And then he hurt his knee, and then he became he became a backup. And then he found his way to New Orleans, and he took advantage of a situation when Drew Brees got hurt in 2019. He played 5 games, started 5 games for them, went 5-0, did really well. And he set himself up for a huge payday. Remember last offseason when all these veteran quarterbacks were available? I mean, he cashed in with the Panthers, and good for him. But now they're ready to move on from him already. And now they're going to be, if they cut him, they're going to save some money, but they're still going to have a lot of dead money this year and next year. So, it's an interesting thing, but I don't know. To me, I'd want to get that guy, that quarterback, right from day one, and put him in my system, and throw him out there and have him be the starter. And that brings me to my next topic. Actually, it transitions quite nicely into what I want to talk about next, and that's this ongoing desire. I don't even call it a desire. This urgency that people have when it comes to the Steelers and finding the heir apparent to Ben. Now if Ben Roethlisberger was gone, if they decided to move on from him, if he decided to retire, then bringing in a guy like Sam Darnold would have made perfect sense. But since he's still here, and he's going to be playing for at least 2021, meaning Ben, where's all this urgency coming from to bring another quarterback in? There's talk. The talk's kind of heating up a little bit about Justin Fields, the Ohio State quarterback. A lot of people are talking about the bromance between him and Mike Tomlin when Tomlin visited his pro day, and they're speculating now. And it's not just BTSC. Michael Beck wrote an article on Friday about that, but it's national. Like a lot of these national pundits, like Adam Schefter said the other day that he heard that the Steelers were in the market for a quarterback this draft. And I know he's one of the best insiders going, and his information is usually pretty good. But I just don't get where this is all coming from, as far as they have to get a quarterback this year. Like every offseason, you seem to hear that about from especially the national types, the national pundits. They have to get a quarterback this offseason. And then of course the fans say it, the local media, they talk about that too. And I just don't understand it, because with Ben coming back, it seems to me like you wouldn't bring him back. And I've said this before, but it doesn't seem to matter. I've said this before. If you brought him back for 2021, then you're doing so with the intent of trying to win in 2021, whatever that means. A championship, a division. You're certainly going to try to compete, right? That's your goal, to contend, to compete. So why bring in a quarterback with the number 1 pick? And when you have Ben here, instead of trying to address another need, tackle, not receiver, tackle, running back, whatever, to me, that's what you owe that to your team. If you're bringing back this veteran quarterback, this 39-year-old quarterback, then you owe it to your team and to him to try to put the best possible product on the field for 2021. And like the whole grooming thing, I've talked about this a million times. It doesn't matter. It might, you can point to Patrick Mahomes and say he sat on the bench and then he played. Aaron Rodgers sat on the bench and he came in. But those guys would have been great if you threw them in right from the moment they were drafted. If you just threw them in and said, go play quarterback for us, they would have been good. They're that special, right? Same with Ben. He was thrown in because Maddox got hurt, and he's been the rest is history, right? You can say that about so many quarterbacks, right? If you want to talk about examples of people who've been in a system for a while, Mason Rudolph's been here for what? It'll be his 4th year. If everything goes according to plan in 2021 and Ben doesn't get hurt, Mason Rudolph will have finished out his rookie deal, and all we'll know about him is that he played 10 games in 2019. He mopped up a couple of times in 2020, and he started the last game of the regular season. Maybe he does that exact same thing in 2021, and then he'll be a free agent. Now you have to make a decision on him, but you don't know anything about him because he's been in your system for 4 years. He knows your playbook, but you don't know if he's good or not. And a lot of people already think he's bad because of that small sample size, but we don't really know for sure because he wasn't thrown in as a starter from day one. He didn't spend 4 years as a starter for the Steelers, so we don't really know if he has more potential or not. So, and to me, if you're gonna find Ben's replacement, you do it. And I've said this before, and I keep realizing I realize I keep saying I said this before because it seems like I say it all the time. When Ben retires or they cut him or whenever that is, you're going to draft a quarterback and you're going to throw him in and you're going to see what happens. And it's not that simple, of course. You know, you're going to want to surround him with the best cast possible as far as teammates and coaching. You're going to want to build around his strengths as a quarterback. And I have all the faith in the world that the Steelers are going to do that because they're the Steelers. And I hate to talk like that because I know they're not a perfect organization, and they have their issues. They certainly have their issues. Nobody's the Steeler way is a myth. I think we can all admit to that. But one thing that's been their calling card forever since the 70s is stability in the front office in coaching. At the head coach. It's a family-run business. It's a family-owned business. That's not going to change. They've had like 3, not official general managers, but 3 people who have performed those duties since the 70s. Todd Haley's dad, I think that's who it was, if I'm not mistaken. Of course, then Tom Donahoe in the 90s, late 80s into the 90s, and then of course Kevin Colbert. So. And then of course they've had 3 head coaches. So there's going to be stability there. The thing that drives me mad about so many of these teams that invest in a quarterback in the draft is their teams are train wrecks. They're always firing their coaches. Like by the time some of these quarterbacks reach their third season, they're on their second head coach and their second GM, and they're selling off all their assets for draft picks. So how do you expect a young quarterback to develop in an environment like that? It's ridiculous. And I don't see that happening with the Steelers. I think they made a mistake. I don't want to say made a mistake, but they didn't know any better in the early 80s. When they had their first dynasty in the 70s, that was their first taste of winning, right? That was their first taste of winning as an organization. They had 40 years of just nothing, losing. They were the laughing stock of the NFL, of sports. Johnny Carson made jokes about them during his monologues on the Tonight Show. They were a laughing stock. And then they had this 10-year run, this historic run where they drafted all these Hall of Famers, legendary defense, Bradshaw, Stallworth, Franco, Swanee, the whole bit. Mike Webster. It was great. And then when it was time to do it again, maybe they didn't place as much importance on the quarterback as they should have. And in fact, Chuck Noll said that, infamously, when he passed on Dan Marino in the '83 draft. He said to whoever he said it to, "We built with defense the first time. We're going to do it again." He picked Gabe Rivera. Obviously, that old school thinking was still pretty prevalent, not just in Pittsburgh, but all around the NFL, even in the '80s into the '90s. We saw it with Bill Cowher. He was all about rushing the ball and defense, and they didn't really invest in the quarterback like they should have. Mark Malone was a first round pick in 1980. They didn't do that again until Big Ben in 2004. They had a few third-round picks. Cordell Stewart was a second-round pick. They didn't really fully commit. They brought in David Woodley. They brought in Todd Blackledge, 5 years after he was the number one pick. Kent Graham, right? Tommy Maddox, who was a former number one pick, but he was basically a cast-off journeyman by the time he got here. So they didn't really fully invest in the quarterback. And I don't think they're going to make that mistake again. They're gonna bring a guy in when it's time to do that, whoever that is, presumably in the first round, and they're gonna know what to do this time. I'm not saying it's gonna work. There are no guarantees that it'll work. I mean, you look at some of these quarterbacks. I mean, people are talking about Justin Fields. Oh, they have to trade up to get Justin Fields. They were saying the same thing 3 years ago, or was it 2 years ago, about Dwayne Haskins, and now they have him as their third string quarterback on a prove-it deal. Mitch Trubisky rose up the draft boards back in 2017. He bypassed Patrick Mahomes and all those guys, and he was the second pick in that draft. Now he's Josh Allen's backup, who was drafted in 2018 by the Bills. He went there to be their backup. So there are no guarantees. But I know they're going to give it their all. They're going to give it the best shot. They're going to, you look at the Ravens are a great example. I know it pains me to say this, but the Ravens are a great organization. They're a well-run organization, stable front office, great head coach, even though he's a jerk. John Harbaugh's a great head coach. And they drafted Lamar Jackson, and they knew what to do with him. They knew that they had to tailor their team around him. So halfway through his rookie year, he was the man. Joe Flacco was out, and it was Lamar Jackson's team. And I think the Steelers are going to be that same way with whomever their new quarterback eventually is in the future. If you're gonna make that commitment, if you're gonna take that risk and commit to that quarterback, why not do it when the time is right? Why trade up now? Like, to people talk about them trading up for Justin Fields. First of all, that would be a lot. They would have to give up to get him. At least a couple first round picks, if not more than that, to trade up high enough to grab him. And there's no guarantees there that he's going to be anything. There's no guarantees that even Trevor Lawrence is going to be anything. I know that shocks a lot of people, but that wouldn't surprise me if Trevor Lawrence his face was on one of those. I always say those websites that are linked to the bottom of other websites. The biggest draft busts of all time. It wouldn't surprise me one bit if you saw Trevor Lawrence and his long hair pictured on some draft bust article in like 2025. So there are no guarantees. So if you're going to do that, if you're going to be aggressive, why not do it when you can take that guy and make him the man right away? Whether it's next year's Justin Fields, next year's Trevor Lawrence, next year's Zach Wilson. That's the way to do it. Why do you think the Jets traded Sam Darnold, who, by the way, is another example, third overall pick 3 years ago? Now he's with the Panthers, and now they're going after Zach. They're going to draft Zach Wilson. Why do you think that the Jets got rid of Darnold? Because they want to draft Zach Wilson and put him in right away and make him the guy from day one. That's how you should do it. That way it gives you 5 years to find out about the guy. Not just 1 year, not just 2 years, not even 3 years, but 5 years. Because think about it. Like say they draft Justin Fields this year in the first round, and he sits for this year, and he's the man next year. Well, now you have 2022 and 2023, and then by 2024, you're going to have to decide: do we pick up the 5th-year option on him? Because you have to decide that before his 4th year kicks in. So that's only 2 years to find out about that guy, as opposed to 3. Excuse me, I'm getting all worked up. So anyway, those are my thoughts. To sum it all up, when the time is right, the Steelers are going to get their man a quarterback. It doesn't mean he's going to be the man, but they're going to get their man, and they're going to do everything they can to make him the man, because they're the Steelers. And that's all I have to say about that. And on that note, that brings to a close the first half of this episode of Steelers Friday Night Six Pack. If you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, don't go anywhere. I am going to be right back. If you're listening on an audio platform, please do me a favor. I have all this energy tonight. Please download part 2 of this episode of Steelers Friday Night Six Pack. I will be right back. And welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to part 2 of this episode of Steelers Friday Night Six Pack. I'm your host, Tony Defio. If you're watching me on YouTube, if you stuck with me on YouTube and Facebook, thank you for sticking with me live. If you downloaded part 2, I thank you for that. Always appreciated. So I want to see what we have here in the live chat before I move on. And here's one from John Trent, and he says, and his name's been brought up in some mock drafts and by some analysts. And John Trent says, Kyle Trask, what do y'all think? I think he's the Florida quarterback, right? And that's an example right there, Kyle Trask. I mean, there's somebody that you would probably, if you're going to draft him, would be like in the second or third round, right? And he would sit this year, behind. If you drafted him, that you're probably going to part with Haskins, I'm guessing, because Mason Rudolph's your experienced backup now. You probably don't want to get rid of him. He doesn't cost you a whole lot. You want to have an experienced backup. So it would be Ben, Rudolph, and then Trask. And let's say Ben retires after this year. Well, now you've already used up 1 year of Trask's rookie deal. So now you have 3 years to find out about that guy. Do you throw him in there next year? And what happens if he has a kind of if he struggles in 2023? Would it be 2023? In 2022, I guess. If he's the man in 2022 and he struggles, do you panic and move on, or do you let him finish out his rookie deal? That's the thing. He would only have really 3 years to prove himself on his rookie deal. Whereas if you get somebody in the first round, somebody with a higher pedigree, then I would use the entire 5 years. Because look at Darnold. By his 5th year, he's costing you, and it's a lot of money. He's costing you $19 million a year. If you decide to pick up that 5th year option. I don't know what it would be for a quarterback at the end of the first round or in the middle of the first round. He was the 3rd overall pick, but still, you're paying, like, he's in his 4th year and you owe him $4.7 million. That's a pretty darn good investment. If he was the real deal by now, which we don't know yet. But if he had evolved to that, of course, if he had evolved to that by this point, he'd probably want a new contract, similar to Patrick Mahomes. So that's a good example. You bring these guys in the second and third round, and they sit for a couple of years. Well, by the time they get in there, you don't really know about them because they don't get to play because they're behind a really good quarterback. And by the time they get a chance to play, maybe they don't look so good. Is it because they don't have it or because they don't have the experience? And then the clock's ticking, and you got to make these decisions. Like Mason Rudolph, by the time he becomes a free agent, what is he going to command on the open market? Are teams going to be desperate and overpay for him? Or are they going to get a bargain and he turns out to be really, really good? You just don't know because you don't know about Mason Rudolph because he hasn't even had the preseason to prove himself. He had the one preseason. I guess he had 2 preseasons. He didn't get the preseason last year, obviously, But I mean, even if he did have the preseason to prove himself, it doesn't prove anything. I mean, Landry Jones. Excuse me, by the way. He, like Mike Tomlin joked years ago, he had more preseason snaps than any quarterback in the history of the NFL, and it didn't seem to do him any good. Last time I saw him, he was trying to make it in the XFL. So, before it went under. So, I don't know. Just Me asks, am I the only one who prefers a pocket quarterback? I don't know if it's necessarily that. I don't think it matters if you're a pocket quarterback or if you're mobile. Are you effective? Is your team able to build around you and have and get the most out of you? That's the key. Like the Ravens were able to build their entire team around Lamar Jackson. It hasn't paid off yet in terms of championship success, but they've been good. He's been an MVP, so he still has some things to work on. But he's their man, and that's their team, and their identity is through Lamar Jackson. Whereas Justin Herbert, he's more of a pocket passer, and it's only been 1 year, but he looks like he could be something really special as a pocket passer. Although I don't think there's ever going to be a true pocket passer anymore, like Ben or even somebody who's less mobile than that. Somebody who just I think all these quarterbacks have to be somewhat athletic now. I mean, it's just how it is. I mean, Patrick Mahomes can run. He's not a a runner necessarily, but he can do everything. He can stand in the pocket. He can throw on the run. He can run when he has to. Russell Wilson's been doing that kind of stuff for a long time. So I think those are going to be that's the kind of quarterback. Like Baker Mayfield's another one, very athletic, very mobile. That's just where the NFL is heading, and that's the future of the league. You look at all these quarterbacks now. These quarterbacks coming out, they're all kind of like that. They're in that mold. They can run when they have to. They can stand in the pocket. They can throw on the run. I mean, that's just how the position is now. Like the days of Blake Bortles, I think those are coming to an end. I don't think you're going to see those kind of quarterbacks anymore. At least not for a long time. There's just defenses are too fast, too good, too strong. You're just not going to see like those days are coming to an end. It's becoming more and more like college football now. They're adopting more schemes that like you see in college. It's just more sophisticated, but that's what you're seeing now. So, and it takes me to my last topic, and that is about when you're talking about the draft, when you're talking about drafting for need versus drafting the best player available, value. And I think when people say that, like the other day, Jeff Hartman, he put a poll out. He included a poll in one of his articles, and he listed like what position you think the Steelers should focus on. And it was like all the positions that are perceived needs, like offensive line, inside linebacker, running back, etc. And somebody wrote, "How about none of the above and go for best player available?" I think that's how they said it. And when people say that, I gotta laugh because when they're saying that, what they're saying is you don't want to reach, like they don't want the Steelers to reach, but other people, when they say that, they take it, they mean it literally. Like they're so they're so intent on getting draft value that the thought of a team passing on a player who's graded higher to take a player who's graded lower just because he feels it turns their stomach. But I mean, you gotta be more reasonable about that kind of a thought process. I mean, it's not, you can't take that literally. Like I saw a couple of mock drafts that had edge rushers going to the Steelers, which is, you can't, you take those with a grain of salt, but it still made me laugh because, I realize these people that do these mock drafts, which is everybody now, they probably get bored and they want to mix things up and everything. And it's like, even still, I mean, come on, the Steelers, they need a center. They need, they may need tackles. They could need an inside linebacker. They certainly need a running back. They need a tight end. Did I miss somebody? Maybe even a cornerback. I mean, there's so many areas that they can address, and there's going to be so many of those players available when they draft at 24, and it's all going to be close. Why would you draft an edge? I mean, it just to me, that's just because he offers you the best value. Who cares? Like, I mean, I might be on board with that if Alex Highsmith, was such a raw talent last year that he couldn't even get into any of the games and play. But he did a lot. He showed a lot last year in his rookie year. He made some key plays for them. He showed a lot of promise, a lot of potential. So the need to draft an edge, I mean, that shouldn't even be a consideration, in my opinion. And same with defensive line. I mean, I realize depth might be an issue, but you have 3 strong starters now that Alulu is back. So, who cares? I mean, focus on those positions later. I mean, I don't care if it's the best edge player left on the board. If it's a close race between the best edge or the best outside linebacker or the best defensive lineman, 2 areas that the Steelers aren't really weak at least on, that's the perception anyway. If it's close between that and like the 4th best tackle, or even if Creed Humphrey is there, he's the best center. And a lot of people would say that's a reach if they would pick him there at 24. If it's a close race, I'm going with the tackle or the center or the running back. even if you are adamant that you cannot take Creed Humphrey at a center, that would be a major reach. Okay, fine, you eliminate center and you eliminate tight end, because after Kyle Pitts, I don't think there's really another first round talent on the board other than the kid from Penn State. He might be a borderline first rounder, but he's more a second round kind of talent. So you eliminate those two, right? So maybe you eliminate corner because you have faith in Sutton, Pierre, and Lane. Okay, but that still leaves tackle. It still leaves inside linebacker, and it still leaves running back. And maybe Zavin Collins is gone. Well, it still leaves tackle and running back. And there's a lot of prospects from both of those groups, both of those positions, with first round grades. So I'm not taking an edge. I'm taking one of those. I'm selecting a running back or an offensive tackle. That's what I'm going to do, because those guys, those are areas of need. And, let's be real. At least on paper, Lawrence Taylor is not going to be hanging around at 24. Maybe TJ Watt's a great example that you can find a Lawrence Taylor at 31 or 30 or whatever, wherever he was drafted. But on paper, he's not going to be there. The gap between the best edge and the fourth best tackle or third best running back is not going to be that great where you have to go, oh my gosh, we're really reaching here. No, you draft for need. And basically, who's to say what the best player available is anyway? I mean, all these big boards are all over the place. These mock drafts are all over the place. These grades are all over the place. I mean, some people think Jalen Phillips could be a stud. Some people think he could be an absolute bust. At the prospect from Miami. So who's to say what the best player available is? That's all a matter of opinion. It's all in the eye of the beholder. So I think you go for need as long as it's reasonable. If you want to argue Artie Burns, all right, I get that. Although he was a fringe first round prospect. I mean, Terrell Edmonds was, basically plucked out of thin air. So that's another one that people, I'll give you that. But he's turned himself into a pretty good starter. Like Dave Schofield said about a month ago when he was co-hosting with me on this show. He said, I think it was him who said that. It might have been Brian, but I think it was Dave who said if he was a second or a third round pick, nobody would have any problem with Terrell Edmonds because he was picked in the first round and he was a reach. But, those two examples aside, if it's a reasonable pick, if it's a reasonable prospect, then I have no problem with it. No problem whatsoever. If you're the Super Bowl champ or a great team who doesn't have any holes, and you want to go out and draft your starting safety for 2023, fine. But most teams aren't in that. They don't have that luxury. They usually have 2 or 3 needs that they have to address when they head into a draft, at least, if not more. As you can see with the Steelers, they have like a half a dozen. So, other than those teams, everybody else is drafting for need. That's why the draft exists in the first place. So teams can improve areas of their roster. That's why it exists. So those are my topics for tonight. And as always, I will take some questions and highlight some comments. So let's see what you guys got here. Here's one from Creix. Follow up on the Kyle Trask question, and he says Florida does not produce good quarterbacks. And you could say that. I mean, who was the one that started the one Super Bowl? He was only okay. Obviously, Tebow was just a media sensation. So yeah, Steve Spurrier. I think he won the Heisman. He never really did much in the pros. He was he couldn't even be the Buccaneers quarterback. I mean, they were a mess when they were an expansion team in '76, but he couldn't even make it there. So, there's a lot of not many great Florida quarterbacks. Not that really matters, because they were saying Patrick Mahomes was a systems quarterback at Oklahoma State, and obviously he's on his way to the Hall of Fame. So, what else we have here? Here's one from John Knox, and he says, I hate to bring up Brady, but he's a pocket passer and has done fairly well. Yeah, well, but he's a dying breed. There aren't many Tom Brady's left out there. I mean, you have when you're in the NFL, you can't just necessarily dictate to college teams produce these kind of quarterbacks, or else no. The college. Let's not forget big time college programs. They have pressure to win, so they're going to do whatever they can to win. They're gonna use whatever schemes that they can and find the players that fit whatever it takes to win. They're going to win, and basically the NFL has to tailor its game around what college is doing now. That's just how it is. So pocket passer, Brady's doing great, but name another quarterback who is and who fits his mold. I mean, once he's gone, then who's going to be able to do that? Who's going to be able to be that kind of quarterback? And here's one from Eric Pereira. And it never gets old. He says Jesse James caught that ball, and he did. But like a lot of things, they changed that rule like 9 minutes too late. It's great for now, but it certainly didn't help the Steelers back then. What else we have here? Just Me says it's all on the line. I don't know if she means the offensive line or the stakes are all on. I don't know but that's what she says. Let's see if I can find some questions up here. And Bert Tavares asks, any news on Randy Fichtner? No. I mean, the only time I see his name pop up anymore, it's people criticizing him. Nobody. I haven't heard him landing anywhere, but who knows? Maybe he'll pop up somewhere. Here's one from Port Naquimba talking about how fans are more educated now. That's debatable, but there's certainly more fans that are totally into the draft and know what they're talking about as far as where these players are ranked and they watch a lot of film and a lot of tape. And he says fans are so much more educated now. If they have another Artie Burns pick, the fan base will never forgive them. Well, if you mean on draft night, they might be upset. But if they have another pick that's perceived to be like that, and he turns out to be a great player, then all is forgiven. So, Here's one from John Knox, and this kind of. He says sometimes it's not talent, sometimes it's maturity and the ability to cope as a grown-up in a new city does a lot of these guys in. And that kind of, goes along with my point about a lot of these organizations that are just train wrecks whenever these young quarterbacks, they show up and, here's my head coach, here's my GM. And then within a year, they're both gone. And their receivers have been traded off for, draft picks or they've been released or they've been allowed to leave as free agents just so they can as salary dumps or whatever. So there's that kind of stuff doesn't help these quarterbacks. But if you get one in a stable organization like Pittsburgh, then I think they have a much better chance to succeed. And here's one from Explore Your World 2019. I'm thinking Friersmirth or Collins at 24. I'm thinking lots of offensive linemen and running backs you can get later. Tight end and inside linebacker are scarce, and we could put those two players on the field right away, major contributors. Well, I like both of those players, but I think Collins is more. I think he's more projected to go in the first round than the Penn State tight end whose name I don't want to try to pronounce again. Friersmuth. I guess I did try to pronounce it again. But if they can get somebody like that in the second round, I wouldn't have a problem with that. I mean, I think he's a talent, but is he somebody you want to pick in the first round? I don't know. Kyle Pitts. I mean, there's somebody I've been watching a lot of his highlights. I mean, they're just highlights, and I've been reading a lot about him. There's somebody that'd be a dream come true if Pittsburgh could land a weapon like that. But I mean, he's going to be obviously gone by in the top 5. There's somebody who maybe if quarterbacks weren't so valuable, he might be the first player taken off the board. That's how good he is, or that's how he's expected to be. Here's the one from Russ Obenstein. It's just a simple hello. He says, "What's up, Tony?" and all in the chat. We're doing fine, Russ. How about you? And what else we got here? Here's one from John Trent, and he says, and this is this pick's growing in popularity with a lot of Steeler fans, and he says, I think the pick is for me is Javonte Williams, a running back from North Carolina. Yeah, and his draft stock is rising. So I think a lot of people would approve of that pick, Trent. He's exciting a lot of Steeler fans. And here's one from Troy B. He's from Barbados. Troy from Barbados, welcome. Wow, Barbados is a great place. I don't know if I'd be on the internet right now, but I'm sure glad you're here to join us, Troy. And here's one from Russell Paralis, and he says, "What about the Texas A&M quarterback? I believe that's Kellen Mond, right? A lot of people were excited about him, but he's projected to go in the second, third, fourth round, something like that. That's another one of those guys like excuse me, Kyle Trask. He'll probably if they got him, he would sit. He'd probably be the number 3 quarterback this year. And then, if you decide to make a commitment to him as your starter, or at least have him compete for the job next year, perhaps with Mason Rudolph, who you would presumably retain at a pretty cheap price, you've already lost 1 year with him on the bench. Yeah, he would be learning, quote unquote, learning the system, but still, there's nothing like practice. And then he would have a couple years to show you what he can do, and then you have to make a decision on him. So I like to get my quarterback in the first round, ideally, and then put him in from day one. And like I've been saying, let him see what he can do over the course of 5 years. Maybe you don't have to wait the 5 years. Maybe you find out after 3 years he's a total waste, a train wreck. He's absolutely has no value whatsoever, and you move on then. But at least you give it the old college try, so to speak. So that's the way I would do it. But I will say this. I mean, I'm looking forward to 2021 with Ben, but it's going to be one of the most fascinating things that develops with this organization after he does leave. How are they going to handle that situation with replacing him? Are they going to take a quarterback in the first round? Are they going to be aggressive at that time and part with a couple of future first round picks at least, and move up to get the guy that they think can be that man? Are they going to go out and sign a veteran? Like we saw, there's always people available now. I mean, Drew Lock might be available. There's another one that people were high on a couple years ago. Now he might be replaced in favor of one of these new quarterbacks that are coming up. That's what I mean. These teams, they don't give these guys an honest chance, in my opinion. So it's gonna be interesting to see how they handle that situation, because it's something that they really haven't had to worry about in almost 2 decades. But like I said, I think they're going to give it they're going to place much more importance on finding the next franchise quarterback than they did after Bradshaw retired. They're gonna really give it a great effort and do everything they can, surround him with everything that they can that he needs, from the coaching standpoint, from a personnel standpoint, and he's gonna have a chance to succeed here. Even if Colbert retires, whoever the next GM is going to probably be here for the long haul. That's just how the Steelers do it. So there's always going to be stability, and that's going to be a big feather in that unnamed quarterback's cap. And I'm just really fascinated to see how they handle it all. So here's one from Eric Pereira. Oh, I love this question because I know who I would pick. And he says, and it's not a popular opinion among a lot of people. He says, as of today, who would you pick at 24? I've been saying I would pick Creed Humphrey because I think he's head and shoulders I don't want to say the best center, but he certainly seems like the safest center as far as injury history, starting at Oklahoma, team leader, character, all that stuff. And maybe he would be a bit of a reach. I don't know. But if he comes in and he starts for 10 years, how can you say it's a reach, right? If he's your starting center for the next 10 years, if he continues that tradition, and obviously there are no guarantees, that's who I would pick right now. If it was between Creed Humphrey, 3 or 4 of those offensive tackles, Zaven Collins, one of those running backs, I would pick Creed Humphrey because I think you can get there are a lot of tackles that are probably going to fall into the second round. You could probably get one of them. As far as inside linebacker, I think they're better off at that position than they are at center currently. So if you have to pass on a call, then there's some prospects that go in the second or third round that you can maybe find inside linebacker. And as far as running back, I mean, there's more and more people are starting to say some great things about Trey Sermon from Ohio State. So maybe you don't get Najee Harris or Etienne or Javonte Williams, but maybe you can get somebody else in the second or third round who can be a really, really productive back for you for the next 3 or 4 or 5 years. So I would pick Creed Humphrey right now. That's who I would take. I'm not saying he's the best player, but I'm saying as far as what they need the most, I think it's a center. And I think, he's the only one that you can realistically take in the first round without people blowing their stack and without it seeming like a major reach. That's who I would go with. So, well, I feel like I have a lot of energy tonight. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because I've been running a lot lately and sprinting. So I've all this my endorphins are high. I don't know. Anyway, on that weird note, I'm gonna call it a night. And I thank you all for joining me, and I thank you for the questions. And it was a fun show, and I can't wait to talk to you on Monday on the Hangover with Brian. So you all have a great weekend. And if it is the weekend, if you're listening on the audio, I hope it continues to be a great weekend. And until I see you next time, go Steelers, and you all take care.